Now, I feel like a lot of people won't like this, so I've come prepared. Australian politicians are underpaid, and we should pay them $1 million a year.
Mate.
And that seems like a hot take, but it's not. It actually represents a real structural issue that we have. You see, we've accidentally created the worst possible incentive system for how we pay our politicians. This election got me thinking, are these guys really the best we've got? Are their credentials world class? And the answer is no. Because if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. I'm Charlie Earside, and I'm not a politician, but I do know about incentives. Because incentives helped build the companies I've created. Companies that are now worth close to $1 billion. Before that, I helped build brands like Koala. And I also got my mullet on the Young Rich list. Incentives shape everything. They're the hidden forces that shape how people behave, how groups interact, and how systems perform. And right now, our political system is performing horribly. But here's the opportunity. If we judo flip those incentives, we can build a country that actually delivers. Think the high-speed rail delivered without the blowouts. Think clean energy and cheaper energy bills. Think Thursday nights Q&A and without the cringe. Well, that would actually just change my life. That's why I started this channel, to help Australia think big and start being the best at stuff once again. So if you like building a better life and raising up the community with you, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. But first, why does having the right political leadership matter? We've got the housing crisis, the clean energy transition, we've got a flatlining economy, healthcare and disability services stressed out, we've got AI, all on the horizon. And the people that we're sending to deal with those issues, well, they're hardly the A-team. And the reason for that is the way we pay politicians has created a series of perverse incentives. Let's look at the first one. Mediocre talent. And by talent, I mean lack thereof. So the baseline pay for an Australian politician is $233,650. That's not much more money than a really good lollipop operator on a Victorian job site. The problem with $233,000 is it sits in this weird little no man's land. It's not enough to attract the top performers, the CEOs, the scientists, the engineers, the doctors on the bikies, on 300, 500, $1 million a year. And it's not prestigious enough either to attract the folks that have already made it. Think the publicly minded people, the statesmen, the visionaries, the operators. While everyone else, so this last basket, people just go, sure, the money would be nice, but is it really worth it? The hate mail, the schedule, the stress. So we end up with this tiny funnel. We don't attract people that would want the money, and we don't attract the people that would want the mission. And what we do attract is people that love to play the game. That's right, career politicians. Think the most cooked young libs, young Labor types you'd find on a university campus. And these are people that in their final evolved form have spent 10, 15, 20 years climbing the greasy pole within the party. Their skill set is often survive pre-selection, manage internal politics, and avoid controversy, because this is their chosen career. They don't really have anything to fall back on, and so the party holds all the leverage. So there's your answer. Why politicians don't make waves. They build alliances, destroy their enemies, and once they've been doing it for 25 years straight, they're bland enough to become Prime Minister. Oh wait, there's more. It gets worse, because there's a second order effect of this bad incentive. Basically, ambitious people on $233,000 a year are always going to want more. They're going to want more money and more prestige. And this has created an environment ripe for corruption. A Russian friend of mine, who's lived here for 15 years, surprised me when he said, in Australia, and I won't do his voice, in Australia, corruption isn't loud, it's polite. And I call it soft corruption. You see, for many politicians, the game starts after they leave. Their next step is predictable. It could be a board seat. It could be a cushy university posting. It could be a role in an industry that they once regulated. On paper, these are completely above board, and you can't actually blame these guys for wanting to provide for their family. But you can see that the incentive it creates here is rather awkward. These guys might have it in the back of their head that they won't go hard on this particular business. They won't reform that industry, especially if it's a role or a company that they might have their eye on for after politics. The best example of this in recent years is going to be the Chairman's Lounge, which Joe Aston absolutely nailed in his book, seriously dense book. But basically the story is that Qantas set up this beautiful lounge, free access to top CEOs, directors, and Australian politicians. Now, it didn't feel like a gift because it's actually a service, somewhere to go before their flights and their busy travel schedule. And Qantas, at the same time, was able to pull off some of the most crazy industrial relations reforms and also made a huge amount of money from government bailouts. Superbly well done by Qantas. And the politicians fell for it because who wouldn't fall for that kind of prestige? And that story for me crystallized that we need to do something about politician pay and the set of incentives that we've created. So what are we going to do? Simply put, we pay them $1 million a year each. And the goal there is to attract talent, but not to retain loyalty. And this will help us widen the funnel to attract people with the vision, the follow through, and the executive function to make a huge impact on the country. We should be competing with Macquarie Bank, with elite sport for the best leadership. Scientists, engineers, inventors, artists, teachers, carers, they're all back in play. Because many government departments are actually bigger than some of our biggest companies. And so you're going to need people that know how to run things or can at least inspire the people that do. Critically, we need candidates that don't give a shit, that don't need their political party. They can run on ideas and not just be obedient, because if they lose, they can walk away and go back to their awesome life. So how much is this going to cost? Well, there are 227 Australian politicians in federal parliament. We're talking about $1 million a year each, so $227 million. Now, for reference, the Australian federal expenditure is $734 billion. That's a rounding error. That's not even, what is that? It's 0.03%. It wouldn't even be noticed. And what you get is the potential to save so much money just by having really good people in there. And the great thing is as well that I failed to mention is that it's not an original idea. It's actually happening in Singapore, where their politicians are paid upwards of $1 million a year. And Singapore has amongst the lowest corruption for politicians in the world, and there's high prestige. Politicians are generally revered. And look, I'm not saying Singapore's the perfect place, but it's definitely an effective place. Okay, we're on a roll. I think we can actually go further here. So how about we remove the famous pension? Yep, the same pension that means that Peter Dutton, after being voted out of his electorate, could receive 230 grand a year for the rest of his life. Well, I think it's a good idea to get rid of it because the pension creates another perverse incentive. This one is called empire building. As the pension gets better, the longer that you've been around, what you get is politicians optimizing for being there the longest. They slow things down and they avoid other people getting in. The biggest risk isn't failure, it's rocking the boat before the pension vests. So let's keep it clean, $1 million a year and no pension after you're done. You're here, you're dialed in, you're earning, and you're earning well. Now, the final piece of the puzzle, the final piece of the incentive system that we need to redesign is around prestige. Paying them all $1 million a year is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting because money, it's like a law of physics, tends to have that effect. But prestige isn't just about salary. It's about how we treat leadership itself. This is also an uncomfortable thing because we've all grown so accustomed to hating on politicians. Being a politician is a hard life. You've got the long hours, the public scrutiny, the constant smear campaigns, getting yelled at. It's not a lot of fun, let's be honest. It's a sacrifice, and we need people to make the sacrifice. So we need to put politicians to some extent, back on a pedestal, which tends to be a hard thing for Australians to swallow. Typically, we have been a very egalitarian society. It's time to rebuild respect for the public service, but it will take a little bit of a mindset shift from us. But I think once we start getting the best people in the best seats with the best incentive system around them, well, we'll actually start to like these people. We'll start to respect them, and we'll start to revere them. And great things will start to happen. That's it for now. Yibbity yibbita, and see you next time.